about an introduction to field audio recording. We've got some experts in the field. I'd like to introduce them now. First, we have Dan McCoy, CAS. He's an Emmy-winning supervising production sound mixer. He has over 20 years experience in cinema and documentary sound. He's a member of both the Cinema Audio Society and IATSE Local 695. He's the owner of Tone Mesa, which is a boutique audio production and post company. And then there's this other guy, Noah Mathers, but I don't know, no relation.
My first call.
Noah is actually my nephew, and I'm very proud to, although he doesn't brag about it, I'm very proud to have him as a professional sound man. He's a founding member of Digital Cinema Society. He was back there with us 18 years ago. He's a member of Local 659, 695, excuse me, as a production sound mixer. And he specializes in capturing great sound in difficult locations. He's got a lot of stories, been all over the world. Yeah. And he's a veteran of the U.S. Navy, and he's got 14 years of experience now. And he works for clients such as NBC, ABC, Discovery, anybody that'll pay him. Pretty much. So I'm going to turn it over to these fellows now, and thank you very much. Did you want to start with playing a video? Noah has a video that he would like to play for you.
Will you marry me?
What?
I got you this ring. Will you marry me?
What?
Will you be my wife?
So y'all, we're mixing front of house, and we're going to mic up our speaker here, and I'll give you a little demo on how we're going to wire him up. If he's standing or sitting, I like the front pocket because it looks like a phone. So I'm going to go ahead and drop a mic down here, and this is, you can say...
Consent first.
Consent, yes. Can I put this mic
Yeah,
on?
go for it. I'm good.
Nope, we'll be good.
I don't think we're hearing you, Dan, right now.
I'll get a wire on in 2 seconds. And we have wired our presenter, number 1. So go ahead and give me a line check there.
Check. 1, 2. Why do sound guys only say 2? Why do they only go to 2? Anybody know? 1, 2? Because on 3, most people lift things. Yeah.
So the video, let's talk about the video.
The video. Everybody like that? That's what happens when you use a producer's mic, and it's good enough because it's not good enough. Every chance you get, you should hire a sound professional if you can. If you can't afford a sound professional, you probably can't afford to do the project you're doing. So that's something to think about. Dan's micing himself, which worked. A lot of people have done that.
Let's see. You hear me? Hear me okay? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so thanks for coming out, everybody. This means a lot to us that so many people are interested in better audio. I'm floored.
It could really ruin your shoot. A little hot.
There we go. All right.
So there's a lot of sound professionals here. Who does live mix? A bunch.
Fantastic.
And post? Yeah, I've seen your emails. Thanks.
We don't want you calling. We don't want you calling. We want to call you first and sort out how to avoid post problems by getting better audio on set. So I think we'll start with just talking about basics, what a good tool is on set and how to use it, how to implement it. Normally the call comes in and producer says we got X amount of talent in this kind of environment. We need to get something that we didn't think is possible, whether it's a noisy environment, a car situation, a jungle situation.
Being in the jungle, that's my picture out there in the jungles of Costa Rica, where I have an entire second unit on my back because we were in the middle of nowhere. And if stuff went down, we had to have backups of everything. So, you know, super fun.
We say yes because we love challenges, right? We love to take on those challenges. And I'm sure, well, a lot of our calls come from operators and DPs that want something that matches their beautiful image. And normally that's a beautiful voice or a beautiful sound bed. You cannot get that without a good engineer or a good mic. So if you figure out placement and the tools, you can really achieve that gap of getting a good asset to be married with your picture. And we're just going to kind of talk about briefly what a configuration might look like for camera and kind of move into the basic technology workflow.
Yeah, the question I get a lot is this good enough? Is my equipment good enough?
Right.
And I always say if something's stupid and it works, it's not stupid. So they always say the right camera is the one that you have.
Yeah.
And you know, you should be picking your tools based on what you can do. That being said, it should be something that it's the right tool for the job. And we've got some good options of tools to look through depending on the situation.
Some of our favorite toys are here, so make sure you stop by and see those afterwards and ask some of the vendors how they make them and what they do. But I'll give you a basic overview. So we're rolling this whole presentation right now on a Mix Pre from Sound Devices. This is a 10-channel timecode recorder. 10 channels is a little daunting, especially when the producer says, how many mics did you bring?
None.
Just one.
Yeah.
One. We have here 2 dual receivers, so you got 2 channels on each of these guys, and they're going into a recorder. Every set has a different noise environment. It also has a different RF environment. So I'm just going to take us through kind of wireless audio and how that works, how it works for us and what we like to do. Now, there's some great manufacturers of wireless technology. There's a lot of great manufacturers. A couple are here tonight. Electrosonics, phenomenal. Audio Limited, phenomenal. These happen to be Wizicom, which I also like to use. The benefit of using a really nice front end for your RF, like a really great lens before your sensor, is it enables you to have a really good option picking a great frequency and having really nice bias voltage, signal for your microphone. This gives you increased dynamic range, better frequency response, and better RF companding. So if you're using a good mic at the front, I find that you can actually get a lot more out of your RF system by really tracking how you're taking that mic level and getting it into the RF transmitter. So a lot of people say, you see on the back of cameras there's a mic level, line level. I always like to say, switch that when you know what the source is. Where is the mic and where is the line? Well, the mic in a lot of our situations is on the talent. And the mic power comes from that pack that you need to hide or plant. And so what I like to do is when we get to set, we'll start with everything off. Be in the situation you're going to be in with the bag. Sometimes you don't have the luxury of one location. You're moving from location to location to location. Or sometimes you don't even know what the next location is, a la documentaries.
How many people know the difference between line and mic? Line and mic? Okay.
So the key here is all three of these manufacturers here tonight, they all scan a little differently, but the principle is this. Start with your first receiver, scan it, whether it's a G3 or Electro or a Audio Limited. They're very fast now at scanning in any kind of environment and picking frequencies mathematically that really work for your noise environment, for your RF noise environment. Once you have that, you can pair your transmitter to your receiver manually by going to the frequency that was locked on that first channel, or sometimes there'll be an IR that will auto-sync the receiver to the transmitter, which is very handy in high-speed situations where you got to move quickly. What I typically do is I set my first transmitter, lock that, take it about 20, 30 feet away from the receiver, keep it on, and then boot it up, get to the second channel, do the same procedure, keep that transmitter on, move to the third transmitter. So you see what we're doing here, we're increasing to that RF environment while we're scanning. And that often gives you a sense of reliability, but you're also checking your inputs, making sure your mics are sounding good and properly attenuated. So, or amplified. You want to make sure that when that mic is on someone's body, you know, a lot of times we check our mic talking right into it here, but most of the time the talent's not going to be doing that, they're talking out here. So when you're getting your gain stage, make sure your voice is in the orientation of where the talent will be and how they'll be moving. Every wardrobe's a little different. You get quite a bit more gain down here. It's reflecting off the chest. Try and keep it center, right? So your access points are the same, left or right. You're always kind of in the same pickup pattern of that omnidirectional mic. If I was on a desert island, I would definitely be the one voting for an Omni mic. Omni mics can be used in more situations, noisy, quiet, instrument, dialogue, plant mic, effects mic. They have very low handling noise compared to a pattern. I don't know how far I want to get into backplate and the physics of a capsule, but let's suffice to say Omnis are so discreet and so small, they're really nice to have in your toolkit. If I was to pick one mic, it would definitely be an Omni mic for that principle, the fact that you have greater options in the field to use it. It also is quite a bit more natural in voices and harmonics and music and effects.
And a lot of that is ideal situations, what you're talking about?
Absolutely, ideal. Also, less handling noise and less wind. I think I stepped on a cable. See, should have been wireless.
Yeah. My questions are always, I always get the phone call where it's like, how do we mic 6 naked people?
You've had that call.
Yeah.
Same way you shoot them.
Yeah. Yeah, people who are nude, people who are on a deserted island. I've mic'd knights who are in full armor. I worked on RuPaul's Drag Race, which is some difficult miking.
Costumes.
Ultimate Fighter, yeah. So all of this is great when it's ideal, and then when you start you start with that base, and then you have to go way outside and figure out how to work around
Right.
problems, which is going to come from years of experience. But there's tricks for that, but you have to start with your solid base. I think I'm actually. I don't think it is. I think it maybe is short.
Checking. Now, a good receiver will tell you what the transmitting battery does. Okay, we're full. We're all right.
Yeah.
I think it's just a little RF interference here. See if I can attenuate. There we go. I think it's working now.
Sure. I
Until
think
it's
that little crunch.
A little crunchiness. Let's see if I can work around that with a little bit of gain. So omnis in a live situation aren't always ideal.
So explain why that.
Oh yeah, so that happened because the pattern is omnidirectional. There's a sound source, I'm coming out towards it, and this is a very linear pattern that's omnidirectional. So it's going to pick up those frequencies a lot easier than shadowing it or having a hypercardioid or cardioid pattern, which gives you more off-axis rejection and a little bit more control. Just to wrap up the RF.
That was perfect. It went just like rehearsal.
Just to wrap up the RF, once you get everything dialed in and you got your transmitters on, you've checked your gain stage, you really want to listen back do a sample record if you can, monitor what you're seeing, try and get your unity up so that you know when you're at unity gain, which is usually center on a panning device, a dial, we usually try and keep it around 12 o'clock. That gives you the optimal signal flow. So you know that my mic is set, my pack is set, my receiver set, I'm getting my gain into my recorder, and the same principle, you can move this and put a camera here, and the camera would be your recorder. You can take a lav, go wireless, put a receiver on a camera. A lot of manufacturers now have them built in. I know Sony has a hot shoe that gives you 2 channels on one hop, one switching receiver that you can put into any Sony system, FS7, FS5, 9, even the Venice has a hot shoe. But once you've kind of assessed your system and your little mini recording studio is working, you're ready to start miking talent. And that can be a whole host of situations where you have wardrobes that are layered, unlayered,
Starched.
starched,
Silk.
unstarched, naked, dressed. The body is an instrument, right? So you really want to take the time to make sure that your mic is mounted well, and you're using either in this case, we have a piece of foam here, and that foam is decoupling the actual capsule from this piece of clothing. So it acts as a little bit of wind resistance, but primarily it's decoupling the capsule from the body. So nothing here, but if I hit the mic, you can hear it. So it's not transferring the clothing noise, which becomes such an issue when you have so many different wardrobes that a lot of times talent, you don't know what talent's coming in, you know? If you're fortunate enough to have a wardrobe department, you can say, hey, can we try something with cotton or linen? That's all a luxury that we don't always have. But you listen to it, you see if it needs more tape, less tape. This can be altered up and down depending on how much signal you need. I like to try and keep it a little bit under the shadow of the chin, so a little out of that shadow rather. So if the mic's higher, you get a little bit more gain, but less intelligibility, less of the frequencies of the jaw and face and cheekbones and forehead. These are all radiators that we're walking around in. So our skulls actually radiate sound through our diaphragm, our vocal cords, up and out. And this is one of the key reasons that a boom mic is very, very nice luxury to have when you're trying to get very important dialogue that the Omni can't always produce. So I should jump into that real quick. If you can afford a boom operator, it's a big part of your package. Big part of the quality of the sound comes from having a mic in free space. This Omni has a different characteristic if I pull it off my chest. It's going to sound a little less bassy, a little less mid-range, but it will have quite a bit more high frequency if I get it up into the free space above my head. There's quite a bit more free space and a little bit more high frequency the higher it goes on my head. A little less bass, but we can accommodate that with equalization or using a cardioid or hypercardioid, but this area, you know, this is why we in theater will run a mic through a hairline and keep it up high on the hairline. It sounds better, more intelligible than the chest area.
I heard they can fix it all in post.
Any post people? Can post confirm that?
No, don't fix it in post. Yeah. I don't like those emails. I don't like those phone calls. I try to fix it in prep, do as best as you can.
Let's talk about
before you
prep a little
start.
bit.
Prep, and everything's different. That's, you know, the big things for me, I think, are prep is super hard and troubleshooting. My kit is pretty solid. It travels ready. I'm ready to go. You're not gonna get a whole lot of different stuff on basic when you're doing interviews, when you're doing OTFs, things like that. It's turn it on, put this mic on somebody and get ready to go. It's a different environment when you're working on knights in armor beating each other with swords, which I worked on for History Channel, and they broke all of our mics on the first day.
It's a great feeling, feeling.
It was really bad, and then the producers look at you and go, well? And I go, okay.
Why did that happen?
Yeah, why did that happen? Oh, they hit it with an axe. I don't know what to tell you. what did we think was going to happen? And then you'd have to start working on a plan, and putting plants was a big thing. We used DPAs, which were incredibly tough.
Very resilient.
Very resilient mics, way more so than the other ones we were using, which I won't go into, but they were not as tough. Or working with talent who's difficult. You may have a perfect environment and everything might seem super easy, and then you get there and suddenly somebody says, I don't want to wear a mic. I'm not going to do that. And you go, okay.
Where do we negotiate?
Yeah. And sometimes that person's Bruce Springsteen. And
Right.
then you say,
That's
okay.
true. That's true. No, it's a fact. Going back into prep, scout. You know, I would say to all the DPs and operators and ACs out here, if you don't see a sound department representative on your location scout, be nervous. Having your eyes on the location and having your ears on the location saves so much trouble in the post process. Sometimes there could be a 10% cost difference moving that house in that, mid-modern vein 1 mile outside of the flight path of Burbank Airport or Van Nuys Airport. So little things like that compound into very complex issues when you're on the day. Rolling sound, holding for the bus, holding for the train, holding for the plane. It really is something to think about when you're scouting an important feature, an important TV show. Where are the ears for our eyes?
And I've heard that so many times. We came and checked it on Sunday and there were no planes. Well, now it's Tuesday and there are planes. Trying to scout on the day, trying to mimic that environment that you want to take.
One habit I've gotten into is when I do scouting or I do get a locations list from the producer, I'm always mapping it on a Google or a Maps to see where it is in reference to a park, a train station, an airport. And that way I can have kind of a previs of where issues might be created that we can avoid earlier on, before they've inked that contract for that house for 4 weeks, Getting into those on-set issues.
People making coffee in the middle of a shot, that happens. You
Is
deal
that
with
espresso?
it. Yeah, I'll take 2, thanks.
Double pull.
It's great, yeah. Yeah,
Phantom presso.
sure.
It's the new
But that
rage.
it happens. It didn't do it when we scouted it, so I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, it didn't. It was Sunday. We were here
We
Sunday.
were here Sunday.
Scouting is a big thing. Prep is a big thing too. Trying to get in touch with your team on what we're going to be doing action-wise. Are we doing stunts? Are we doing extreme sports? Are we going to high elevation locales with lots of moisture? Are we going to very arid deserts? There are tools to, like protecting lenses, protect the microphone. Some of those are wind protection. Some of those are surface mounts. Wind is the ultimate enemy to any capsule and to any lens, really. They both transduce different things, but it's really important to be conscious of where you're going to be and how windy or moist the environment will be, because it can mean the difference between using one type of microphone system versus another, bringing a softy to cover that microphone or bringing an entire windshield, Zeppelin to cover that microphone system. I also like to look at proximity to digital television. 5G is going up. It's not in the same frequency band, but it's a lot of energy being thrown through the air at very close proximity to us here terrestrially. It's a lot lower than the older cell systems. So I try and keep an eye out for those things when you're moving through your location. Having microphones with a wider band is very helpful, because you're getting, instead of 25 or 100 frequencies, now you're opened up to 300 or 2,000 frequencies that you can scan through and have options in getting around into legal bands of RF technology.
Not being married to a block, essentially.
Exactly. Multiple blocks in one system. Typically it's 3 blocks up to 6 blocks, and blocks represent a band of RF frequencies that the FCC has allotted for not only radio, television, data communications, but also broadcast. And broadcast is an important part of that. So
It's a nice way of saying that there's some frequencies that your mic will let you use that you are not allowed to use.
Correct.
Legally.
That's an important thing, especially when you're traveling across seas. I mean, in Japan, the power requirement for a transmitter, the allowable power is much lower than what we allow in the United States. Important to know where you're going, and if, like I said, in Japan, for instance, 10 milliwatts is the maximum allotted for most circumstances. I think you can get permission with the government for 50 milliwatts or 25. It's pretty low. But those things add up in what you can do with range. You know, in a bag situation, if you're within a sight line of your talent at 50 milliwatts or 100 milliwatts, your odds of picking up that RF with a diversity system are very good. Once you get outside of that and you're going out of the sight line up 300-400 feet, whips on a bag aren't as efficient as dipoles and antennas outside of the bag that you can amplify or by design have an inherent greater amplitude, sometimes up to 9 dB, which is a lot when you're talking about milliwatts in an RF system.
I don't know. I saw Jason Bourne and he had that earpiece in and he was like
He
10
could go
miles
anywhere.
away.
Well, that was satellite. The receiver
Yeah.
was strapped to his belt, I'm
yeah,
sure.
that was miles.
Yeah, that's always fun to see. But yes, sir. If anyone didn't hear that, basically you really want to make sure that your frequency is set before you give it a lot of power on the transmitter. When you raise power, it doesn't mean necessarily it's a one-to-one. You're not going to get more range with more power. It's a sum. It's a balance. So that's why we scan our frequencies first. And if I'm in a room like this, we're on a stage, everything can be 10 milliwatt. We're golden. You know, the diversity will work. I can walk around. There won't be any dropouts. But again, when you're moving rapidly and you're stuck in the bag, you don't have the ability to go up with antennas, right, and get more of that front-end gain. You really want to make sure you have some power on those transmitters and can track your talent as they're moving from location to location. Antenna placement. So this system, any RF system, that's a good one. Thank you.
The one that somebody's not wearing?
Yeah, the one that someone not wearing. Just simple theory here on orientation of your antenna. So in a perfect world, your antenna is always parallel, receiver and transmitter. You always want those aligned for the best RF signal to noise. If that shifts, some of these antennas have these great little joints you can mix in, and if they're living on your camera system, you know, horizontally, you can take that antenna and flip it up and get that same ability to increase your chances of less dropouts by keeping your antenna parallel, okay? There are antennas that come circular, and those don't have the same problem, but again, you can't fit those on a small bag or a small apparatus. Those usually go in a cart situation or a stage situation, but they're very handy because any orientation of that antenna, you're still able to get the same signal path. Another important part, one of the key things that I can tell you that go with gain in your transmitter, for me, is the antenna touching the skin. You lose about 50% of the output RF when that antenna is touching skin. Your body acts as a giant RF sponge and will rob you of your efficiency in transmitting these things. That's why a lot of times in production, if you can, you know, ankles are great, body straps are great. Buffering that antenna with a little bit of foam, if it's next to the skin or has to be concealed.
Same.
Yeah,
Similar.
Yeah, very similar. I find just isolating, decoupling this antenna from the skin gives you a huge advantage in getting that range once you've selected your frequency. I'll just kind of walk through the kit a little bit more, if that's cool. Yeah? So right now we're outputting, all of our inputs are going to their own ISO record as well as a stereo mix. That mix is also mixed down to mono and is being transmitted from a single transmitter These are plug-on transmitters. You see them a lot on the bottom of a microphone. I like them because there's no antenna sticking out. They're all embedded. Really nice for the bag or for the pocket. These are being transmitted and going straight to the camera's receivers. Now, there's 2 receivers on those 2 cameras, and that's giving us a reference mix of everything we're recording and presenting tonight for 2 reasons. One, it's nice to have playback and be able to hear video with audio. It's also a very nice syncing mechanism if time code drops out. You have those waveforms embedded in your picture. If you can, in preparation for your shoot, you're talking to the producers, you're talking to the camera department, you're determining what the camera system is, if you have the right time code cables, the right audio cables. XLRs are pretty universal still, unless it's a red. That's for another session. But it's really helpful to make these calls and avoid the post problems that are so avoidable at the onset of production. With a simple phone call to your re-recording mixer or your editor or your camera AC. We're in this world of texting, and even a text is nice, but to pick up a phone and talk to someone on your crew that you're going to be eating, breathing, moving with for sometimes multiple months or weeks or days, it's important to have a little bit of rapport and a little bit of, hey, I'm checking in, I want to get this right. What are you using? This is what I'm using. Let's kind of get on the same page. So to that end, once I know what the camera system is, I have the right cables for my receivers to go into that camera. I'm transmitting my mix here so that she always has a reference of what they're hearing, seeing. I'm also feeding another output. Most mixers, recorders today have multiple outputs, at least 2 balanced outputs. So the MixPre has a TA3 balanced, and I have it adapted to an XLR to go to this, and another TA3 to XLR male to go to a single lead going to the PA system. And that's how we're presenting tonight, just through this beautiful little piece of technology. It's a mini radio station.
Is that a Sound Devices?
It is a Sound
yeah.
Devices. And behold, a Stingray bag. I think K-Tek's here tonight. Power's always an issue. Lithium is everywhere. These are the standard NP1s that power most audio. There's also eSmart, which is a slicker battery. You can see it over on the Sound Devices table. That's a black battery, similar footprint, but more output, more efficient in the lithium capacity and the voltage. This is our control room, right? Our headphones and our LCD display. Can everyone see that? The LCD is going to be able to tell you, are you getting the levels you need? Are you routed correctly? You can name tracks now. You can use an app to quickly go off your smartphone and preset for post all the nomenclature, the project, time of day, talent's names, what mics you were using. You can really take it into metadata that you could not do even 10 years ago, 15 years ago. That was not a possibility. You'd have the old analog sound reports. Location Sound still might have a pile of them somewhere, but they're great. They're carbon copy. You'd write down everything and hand it in with your reel. And then it was DAT, and then it was DVD RAM, and then now it's SD. So this will enable you to record on simple SD, HC, or a USB thumb drive as a backup. So they can mirror. A lot of these systems now, the designers thought, well, instead of just having a backup on the camera and ISOs here, we're going to have an SD card and a CF card, an SD and a USB card, which gives you that other level of redundancy. Let's talk stories. Enough technical for now. We'll go back to a little technical, but I want to talk about production stories.
I like the technical.
I could just go down forever. We want to kind of make it a little bit more personal. So let's talk about personal stories.
I think communication that you hit on is such a big point because I've definitely arrived at places where they expected certain things, and if it's not communicated to you, you may be put in a very awkward situation, either as the mixer or as production. It's not hard to get a phone call with somebody. If you can't get a hold of your mixer, maybe you want a different mixer. As a mixer, if you're unavailable, you're probably going to end up in these situations where
That's a great point.
You're in the jungle, which, yeah.
I would just say to that end, for all the ops and DPs in the room, a lot of our work actually comes from a relationship with a DP or an operator. All creatives, all technicians want to focus on their process. And when you know that you have somebody on your team that's focusing on their process, you can focus more on your process. How many times have you been to set where you get a shell-shocked operator who's like, are you here to fuck up audio?
Yeah, that's,
Is it gonna work?
it'll work, yeah.
And just easing your team into that process of like, you've got you, I've got me.
Building trust.
Building
It's
trust.
Building trust, yeah.
And that fosters a lot of work. And I will call DPs and operators into projects if there's an opening or availability. You'll always remember the people that made it easy for you to do your trade, your craft. And you'll hopefully call them first, whether it's your tribe of camera team or your post team or your sound team. You want that familiarity and that shorthand so you can focus on the important things and get what the director needs, get what the producer needs. Those things are really important. So I find that these early communications with your sound and camera really add to a solid experience on set. Yeah, let me bring you up, Jim, sorry. Stand by and give me a line check there.
Check, check,
Oh,
check.
you sound beautiful. Now, this is a hypercardioid pattern, so he can get a lot closer to that speaker and have a lot more gain before feedback in a live situation. But
I want
that's
to
another
ask
workshop.
some questions before
Please.
we.
Wow, these are gonna be the good ones.
What should a director be asking you for when they want sound? How can they communicate to you?
It's a great question, because it really irks me to get micromanaged. One of the ones that always bothers me is when the director says, put a lav on that guy, and then we're gonna boom her, and then we're gonna do this. No, you tell me what you need, and we'll talk about it, and we'll develop a plan as to what we can do. We're all on the same team. A project having bad sound, it's bad for me, it's bad for your project. You don't want it to look like the video I showed.
Talent hates doing VO and ADR. They
ADR
hate
is
it.
expensive too. It's expensive, so
So they shouldn't be telling you how to do your job. They should just say, this is the situation, we want it recorded.
that's how I would like it. And I like to build trust with the people I work with, that they trust that I'm gonna deliver good sound to them. And that, yeah, we can look at the script, we can talk about anything challenging. I've done a lot of challenging shows. I've done things where people are jumping off of trains, or there's stuff underwater and they're not sure how they're gonna capture that. And that's stuff shouldn't be discussed day of. That should be discussed as far out as possible.
Amen.
So that we can kind of try to build something and work together as a team.
Now, I know that when I was shooting something for a friend of yours, Peter,
Sorry. Oh, okay.
who couldn't afford a sound man, and
That doesn't sound like a friend of mine.
we took your advice and we made it as doggone simple as we could. We just had 2 shotguns over the talent, and that was it.
Yeah, on stands.
And no mixer, just right into the camera. And
You had the coverage you needed and the audio.
yeah,
and
so tell us
Yeah.
about. It's good if it works, right?
Yeah,
Keep it
again,
simple.
something stupid that works is not stupid. If it works for you and if it's simple, you should be listening to it as a mixer. I have seen professional sound mixers
Control room.
not wear headphones, not have speakers, and they say it looks right. There's no way you can know what's right unless you're listening to it. You should be listening to it and listening to it preferably from your recording source, whether that's directly into camera or whether that's from the mixer, to make sure maybe the mic sounds clean, but coming out of camera, the camera levels aren't set right. You need to be checking where you're recording and making sure that you get good audio.
Okay. So if we have questions, let's come on up.
Context in this guy. How do you use?
Oh
the
yeah,
other-
so the same receivers on the camera would be the same ones that I would hand out to director, scripty, agency. A mono mix is nice to have. When you're on a very complicated set, and sometimes you have one group that needs to hear one thing and the director needs to hear something else.
House reality.
Then you
kind
do
of
a little
thing.
bit more routing, and you could add another transmitter and have a submix on your output. So there's ways to kind of customize that. As far as body recorders, Zoom has one, Lectrosonics has a great one, Zaxcom has one. They're really handy, especially if you can put time code into them, right? Because then you're embedding your anchor to camera, which is beautiful. I personally have a little bit of all those that I use in instances where I have to have them. Again, like a mic, like a pack. You get your gain stage set, you figure out your placement. A lot of them you can actually plug a monitor into and hear it before you let it go with the talent. And sometimes you can get like a 12-hour burn time on a couple batteries. And they can just do their day, do their doc, do the activity. I had a situation like that where we were doing Johnny Mosley, a downhill Olympic skier. Director wanted something rolling all the time. I'm not a great skier. Put the mic on him, put the pack on him, hit record, jam it. Sounds good. See you, Johnny. See you at the bottom of the double diamond. I'll be on the lift.
I've used them on cops where it's something that's got to get hidden and
Right.
you can't be close enough
No.
to guarantee you're getting a signal. Put it on them, send it out. I had an issue where there's the micro SD card and went to take it out and it shot off and it's in the car somewhere and now we have to find it. So
You kind of left a cliffhanger with the History Channel thing with the suit of armor, how you figured that out.
how I figured that
I'm
out.
just curious.
One of the interesting things with the suit of armor is when they put chainmail on, frequencies are gone.
There goes
like
your RF.
immediately.
It's like a Faraday cage.
We were in a very open space in Pennsylvania in a warehouse, and we walked our mics. We were using UMs, I think, to start with, and we're able to walk like across the street. They were great. We were on paddles, multi-max system, so everything powered. Everything's clean, and it's the second that chainmail goes on, zero. Everything dropped to zero. So we ended up rigging a little leather bag. We're able to put these in the bag and then put it on a necklace that we made from leather using
Period appropriate.
period appropriate, blended in. And the DPAs were strong enough, I don't know if I should say this, we could hang the bag off of the mic cord that they held. And you didn't notice.
Fighting.
Yeah,
In full combat.
yeah. And then we had Sennheisers,
Hypercardioids.
hypercardioids, and some 416s and MKH70s around the ring. They fought in this big ring, which was covered in dirt. It was ground up pavers, I guess, so it was in everything. So everything had to be blasted out at the end of the day. But
That was after they broke the first day, right?
yeah, that was the first day.
That was at lunch. We had
Yeah.
to fix that at
The
lunch.
first day was like a blocking rehearsal, and they broke everything they saw on purpose.
I mean, like, you guys have button-down shirts, so it's kind of a natural
We're wearing
placement,
something
right?
very easy, yeah.
So, like, is that sort of like what you try to accomplish with wardrobe, like every time, or do you have to kind of, put it somewhere else?
That's a great question. When I did that little demo of taking the Omni out and bringing it up here, if we have our choice, we would love to work with hair and makeup and actually have a wire here on a glass frame, somewhere on the top of the head to kind of mirror some of the similar qualities the boom can get you in free space. But we always strive, if we can't do that, for sternum. Something, here's your chin, here's the chin shadow, somewhere around here usually has the most neutral for planting it on a body.
Okay.
If you can, it's situational. But I worked with James miking up Billy Gibbons, who has a beard that puts mine to shame. Billy Gibbons from ZZ Top, and it's down to here. And anytime he'd move, you hear crunch.
It's the old sweeping across the mic.
Yeah, and sometimes you have to get creative. I find that I'm normally at the mercy of talent. Most of the stuff I do, I don't have the luxury of telling them where they're going to put the mic. They kind of say, this is what I'm
Suggest, always suggest, please.
In the Me Too movement,
Oh, this is good, this is good.
tell me about all the considerations that you guys have to take when miking a female, a child.
Pre Me Too, it's always everything. It's always consent. You'll work with people, I do the range, I work with actresses who, you go in and they're like, what do you need? Go for it,
Right.
do it. And you'll work with some people that do not want you to touch them. And, it's hard not to get offended. I look like this, I get it. Thank you for your pity. The best you can do is supervise, and you can try to get ahead of that and know that ahead of time, that maybe they have an issue with that, and try to come back maybe with somebody that they are comfortable with.
Like a wardrobe person, perhaps?
Like a wardrobe
That's
person.
I was just gonna amplify that by
Another
saying
great point is that, children, you never mic children by yourself.
school
There's
teacher or
always,
parent or
always two people in the room, always.
AD.
Studio teacher, yeah.
And oftentimes, to that point, ADs will want to say, how do you like to mic them? Do you want to mic them on set? Should we mic them in the trailer? You get that kind of workflow at the beginning of the day, and then everyone's kind of on the same table. You know what you're doing, who's helping you liaison, and who's helping you coordinate. On a larger shoot, individual shoot, it's always ask before you approach, and then as you approach, I like to just walk them through, hey, I'm going to just drop the mic down here, go around your back, and tape it there.
It's like a doctor's appointment. Now I'm going to do this, I'm touching
Right,
you
that's,
here.
yeah, you're kind of narrating the process.
Yeah, standing there in front of the actor doing this, they kind of get an idea of what you're about to do. But yeah, you never grab anybody. That's always the big one, is that I hear horror stories. Oh, the last sound guy just grabbed so-and-so. I was like, whoa, why did they do that? That's going to leave a bad taste, so.
And you guys know all the proper protocol, but somebody might not who was just
Yeah.
out doing audio for the first time, so
Yeah.
keep that in mind.
Yeah, know your talent, know the scope of the project, how sensitive it is. If it's something you're comfortable with doing, do it. If it's something where you'd like to have an expert, do that, and suggest that to the producer. Even if they put the pressure on you, we want you to handle all that. Well, you can suggest, in my experience, it often helps if we have somebody do it who can do it, and I can focus on my task.
What's the difference between this film recorder of this type versus like an H6?
Great question. It's really, that's a great question. There's kind of a standard now with interface. An H6 is a Zoom product. This is a Sound Devices product. We also use products from France, products from Switzerland. The only difference really is what you're paying for as far as preamps or interface.
Do you want to get into the horsepower, like
Right.
nuts and bolts? Do we really want to break it down, or?
But the simple answer is,
Yeah.
the elementary answer is I've used Sound Devices products for years. I know their interface, I know the quality, and this has time code. It has a time code generator, which a lot of the earlier Zoom stuff didn't have. So I can be the master clock for the camera and the slate off of this simple lightweight recorder.
Which allow you to sync everything up in post, and then it's, yeah.
And Woody will be happy with that, Time
Yeah,
code.
with time code, all good, that's, yeah.
And the number of discrete channels is another
That's also
differentiator.
fantastic. They somehow figured out a way to get 10 inputs into this little sandwich of technology, which is very impressive.
The first question is really on redundancy. Where is it necessary?
Sure.
And how do you feel you best achieve it?
I try to be as redundant as possible within posts. I'll call posts and say, hey, we're doing this many, is this too much? And sometimes you get that, we don't want it. I get that. We have so many files to deal with, we don't want blah, blah, blah. I try to give as many as I can, and as many as they'll take. But again,
Does
that's
that mean like double micing a person? or-
no. That's news.
That's something we would do if it was like a live event. Double micing's a great idea.
Sometimes that could mean lav and boom
Right,
for one person.
Right. We often, in our situation, we want to have a boom in there, a lav on them, and a plant if we can, to have that kind of redundancy. If it's you're able to work that into your budget of time and resources. But I would say, going back to the cameras, it's really nice to have a mix, kind of your savior mix. If this got destroyed, you know that you were sending a good mix to your camera that could be used in an emergency.
The second question is, I guess at this point, is questions of, I guess I would say, bit depth, sampling rate, and avoiding clipping. And how do you, what are the choices there?
Limiters and gain stage. Gain stage was kind of the the preface to that is always to make sure that you're using a mic that can handle the correct SPL. So not every lav is created equal, and oftentimes the manufacturer has different sensitivities in their catalog of microphones. So there might be one microphone that's 10 dB less than the other microphone that would be optimal for a very loud sound source, very high sound pressure level, car effects, explosions. You want something with low sensitivity inherent at the capsule to accommodate for that and give you the right gain stage. And then the transmitters these days now have very good limiters to avoid clipping and overmodulation. And there's also now much greater bit depth with the recorders coming out with 32-bit floating, having dual files or a floating file that you can adapt in post, whether it was too loud or too low. You're not going to get a lot of the noise and distortion you once had in a 16-bit or 24-bit system. So 24-bit's been the standard for, I'd say, what, 15 years, 20 years? I think now 32-bit's looking really attractive because it's not too much more space on those wave ISOs, but it does give you a lot more safety in post.
Clothing noise. Do you have any tips or tricks on how to like deal with that? I've heard like, oh, you got to make like a little pyramid out of gaff tape and put the microphone in there. So maybe just some tips and tricks to kind of like deal with that stuff.
That's a really great question. This, I don't know if you could see, this is kind of what I have on my shirt right now. It's basically just
Pull the foam off.
a high density foam that decouples the capsule. Right, your capsule, which without the foam is, sorry I don't have a magnifying glass, I know it's pretty small. This is a very sensitive transducer. You really do want to decouple it from clothing. This is why clips are so famous, but so much of what we do now content-wise, it's hidden, smaller camera bodies, smaller mics. What the decoupling affords you is you can put it in that sponge and kind of use that. There are pucks that are very handy to retape. You can see a couple of those on display with DPA. The puck will create a circular couple from your mechanical noise. Sometimes a little bit of soft moleskin. You can even wrap the moleskin around the capsule head and get an incredible amount of buffering, even lower profile than this. Come through a buttonhole, come out of a seam, t-shirt on the body. I like a foam product or a hard plastic product that.
And these are cheap.
Yeah,
they're relatively cheap.
Encapsulates the capsule and gives you that freedom.
Favorite, like a brand or model for those?
I use a lot of DPA's product and I use a lot of Bumblebee products. This is, I believe, Rycote also has a great product. They all kind of do the same thing. You kind of just got to get used to what lasts the longest and what texture you like, and they all come in different colors for wardrobe.
Yeah, that's just super stick on there on the back to put it in place.
Yeah,
What do you hate talent
Thank
to
you.
show up?
Yeah.
What kind of wardrobe? What kind of material do you hate? What can we warn?
Chainmail, that was the big one. Chainmail's really rough.
Send it all back to Amazon. No chainmail.
Yeah, anything super tight where you're going to see the microphone possibly, and anything really.
Some are more noisy, right?
Silk and starch are about the same. Anything super silky, they go, oh, but it's silk.
Yeah, sometimes a mentor of mine by the name of Jim Tannenbaum, he would always have swaths of wool, really nice actual wool. You could create a buffer on a very noisy environment by putting that wool over the mic and the capsule while it's on the chest or on someone's neckline. And then you could put a very noisy starchy shirt over it. And the buffer of wool would keep enough mechanical noise off the point source of the mic.
And we do the boom over top to cover,
Oh,
even when you do the
God.
miking job, because like Dan just did,
Yeah,
that happens all the time.
booming is a whole nother workshop, and that's a really important part of
But that goes back to the redundancy.
yeah. It also goes to a skill set that, a lot of mixers can mix, not every mixer can boom. A lot of boom mixers, boom ops can mix, but it's a very important division of labor and craft. When you're doing a narrative and you can afford it in your budget to have those two operators working together, it's akin to an operator and a focus puller. They go together for a very profound reason. A good mic in free space will always sound better than a mic attached to your body.
There's a reason it's its own union classification. It's not just someone else who can hold a stick.
And there's an art to cueing and articulating and
And avoiding shadows. I always tell producers.
Yes, that's why.
Hire somebody that knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
It's more than just holding a stick, like you said. They get good audio and they don't dip in all the time. They don't make shadows all the time.
Rehearsals are so important for boom op and camera and blocking of actors. Also, big soft lights are very helpful. And oftentimes when a sound mixer, it takes that preemptive step to talk to the operator, the DP, the gaffer. Can we add a cutter? Can we lighten this intensity somehow? And there's always a workaround when the team has preemptively gotten into it, then we're rolling now, we can't do it. Sure.
If you have a sit-down interview,
Yeah.
do you like to boom from coming down or coming up?
Sure, I always prefer trying to get in front of the face. I always try and get, I kind of, it's hokey, but I always say the third eye is my bullseye. I'm always aiming for right between the brows. I want to come in at about a 45-degree angle if I can, because I'm going to get the maximum frequencies of that individual's head radiating what they can produce. It's going to be focused with the most frequencies in that spot.
And as soon as you do that, the person will do this and sit way forward in the chair.
And then you've put
and
the
then
one
mic's
down.
behind
No.
him. Yeah.
That's why the law
Which
is nice
sometimes you
when
have to
they're
go
rockers,
underneath. You have to go underneath if there's
Yeah.
shadow, if it's a big wide or whatever.
Or a high wind situation where you need the body to help you block some wind. I've had to do that many times.
I haven't heard you mention gain alignment. For instance, the output of the receivers to the input of the recorder.
Sure.
Where you're actually driving a radio link back there.
That's a
How
great
do you
question.
keep from overdriving
Yeah.
and being 10 dB deep in compression in the transmitter, that type of thing?
It's a really
Do you
good
run
question.
tone through? Is that done anymore?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. This device actually has a tone switch, and that's a great point. So just like the gain structure for your transmitters, we're looking at the transmission to the camera link. And typically, I like to run digital into my recorder. So I like an AES signal into the recorder. This unit, price point wise, it just does line or mic analog. So I like to run line level out of my receiver into the recorder because the mic is on the body. It's not at the recorder. It's coming to me line level in the receiver, so I want to keep that line level to get the maximum signal to noise ratio.
Do you EQ much on set, or do you mostly just record everything?
That's a
and
great
let-
question. We try
let
and
post do it?
keep, equalization is a very tricky thing. Equalization, I believe, was developed to cut frequencies, right? So many times we like the bass and the high frequency in our earbuds or our speakers that it's an additive effect, and you're adding distortion and noise every time you're doing EQing to make up for proper placement. So placement and gain structure, I always try and make that a preference over carving out frequencies and enhancing frequencies after the fact.
Because you're
Makes it-
baking
makes
it
it
in,
flat.
right?
Correct.
Yeah.
You
They
can't-
can
you
do
can't
that
reverse
same
it.
thing later.
How would you handle talent that likes to swallow their words like mumblecore, especially with the digital system that already cuts out the resonance within our voices?
Yeah, that's a good question. There is a mic for everybody, Exposure to different capsules and frequency curves inherent in a capsule is nice. It's nice to have a shotgun microphone, a cardioid, a hypercardioid, and sometimes different manufacturers have different equalization built into the capsule. It's voiced for a certain frequency response. I'll just mention quickly, one of the reasons I like the DPA is because it's a very neutral frequency response. It's a very honest and analytical presentation so that when it's placed correctly, I'm going to get the maximum benefit to my signal noise ratio, and then you can kind of tailor that voicing later down the post stream, adding some slight equalization or compression as you need it based on the content, right? Is it a music-driven piece? Is it a sound effects-driven piece? Where is the voice going to sit in that post mix? But going back to the word swallower, Oftentimes, I find that getting a mic in free space or changing from one model to another might have a different frequency curve. And that frequency curve might be just enough to give me a little bit more intelligibility on that speaker. So it's good while you're rehearsing. And if you come into a problem, to try that early on before you're committed to shooting it. So try a few different capsules.
What he said.
Well, I think we're going to have to move on now because we do have a schedule here, but let's hear it for these guys. What a great presentation. Thank you.